The judge's decision came at a critical time just as the clock was running out. A temporary restraining order that she'd previously issued was due to expire at midnight. Instead, this new preliminary injunction now blocks any National Guard deployment in Oregon until Friday.
So Kyle, what's next here for us? We're just in a holding pattern until Friday, essentially?
Well, the judge could provide a final decision at any time, but Friday is the deadline. Clearly, Judge Immergut wants to be thorough, so we'll be watching to see if and when she grants that permanent injunction. Now, keep in mind, that would be the final decision at the district court level, but it wouldn't stop there. The losing party will almost certainly appeal to the Ninth Circuit, and frankly, it could very well go all the way up to the Supreme Court.
All right, Kyle, thank you so much for your reporting and continuing to follow this story for us.
Okay, so you know how Trump always says the judges are against him? You know, like every single time he's in court, he's got some complaint about how the system is rigged or whatever. Well, this time, something completely different happened. And honestly, I'm not even sure Trump saw this coming. A federal judge just completely shut him down. Like mid-sentence, in front of everyone. The courtroom went dead silent. And I mean dead silent. The kind of silence where you can hear people breathing. Where everyone's just frozen because they can't believe what they just witnessed. And here's the thing. This wasn't about politics. This wasn't about whether you love Trump or hate Trump. This was about something way more serious. The judge accused Trump's legal team of bringing fake evidence into court. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
The snow is by design. President Trump is a relentless and regular force in American political life and conversation. So referendums come as they come, when ballot boxes are opened and people stand in line to cast their ballots. Robert, hold on just one second. Because this is a dynamic situation, we left Leslie Sanchez almost mid-sentence to go to a projection call for the New York mayor's race. I want to bring back Leslie Sanchez and political contributor and Democratic strategist Chuck Rocha. Chuck, we'll get you in a second, I promise. But Leslie, carry on.
Let's not overreach, though, on this New Jersey and Virginia election cycle. These are two states that traditionally vote blue. So while I agree with the president that the government shutdown is certainly something that played into this, and Democrats used it to their advantage in blue states, especially when it comes to turnout, for very fair economic reasons, to say just because the president wasn't on the ballot, those are two traditional states that consistently vote for the opposite party for several election cycles. So I think that's kind of a more important.
Okay, evidence. Let that sink in for a second. Can you believe this? We're talking about a former president currently serving his second term, and his lawyers are getting called out in open court for possibly presenting made-up documents. This is wild. Like, this is the kind of stuff that destroys legal careers. This is the kind of moment that makes law schools rewrite their ethics textbooks. So what actually happened? Well, Trump was doing his usual thing. You know, talking, interrupting, trying to take over the courtroom like it's one of his rallies. And the judge just had enough. Slammed the gavel down. Told Trump's team that if they keep presenting questionable evidence, there's going to be consequences. Real consequences. We're talking sanctions. We're talking potential disbarment for his lawyers. We're talking the kind of legal nightmare that doesn't just go away. And Trump, oh man. Sources inside the courtroom say he turned bright red, like visibly furious. The kind of angry where you can see someone's jaw clenching from across the room. His lawyers were scrambling, whispering to each other, probably wondering how their entire defense strategy just fell apart in about 90 seconds. Now here's why this matters way more than just another Trump legal drama. Because let's be real, we've seen Trump in court before. We've seen him fight with judges. We've seen him complain about the process. But this is different. This isn't about a judge being mean to him or ruling against him. This is about the actual integrity of evidence. This is about whether his legal team crossed a line that you absolutely cannot cross in a courtroom. Legal experts are already freaking out about this. One analyst said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that Trump basically handed the judge every single reason to throw the book at him, every reason to be less sympathetic, every reason to be harsher with sentencing or rulings. And the crazy part, people who've been following Trump's legal troubles for years, and I mean really following them closely, they did not see this coming. They expected fights. They expected drama. But they didn't expect a public meltdown over fake evidence allegations. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to break down exactly what happened in that courtroom. We're going to talk about what this fake evidence thing actually means. We're going to look at why Trump's lawyers are now in full panic mode behind closed doors. And yeah, we're going to talk about what this means for all his other legal cases. Because trust me, this doesn't stay contained to just one courtroom. This spreads. This becomes a pattern that other judges are going to look at. And look, I know some of you are thinking, oh, here we go, another Trump legal story. Wake me up when something actually happens. But come on, this is actually happening. This isn't speculation. This isn't anonymous sources saying maybe something might occur. This is a federal judge on the record in open court calling out potential fake evidence. That's not normal. That's not something that just blows over. The judge's exact words, according to people who were there, were basically a warning shot. Like, if you keep going down this path, I will make your life extremely difficult. And for lawyers, that's terrifying because judges have so much power. They can sanction you. They can refer you for ethics violations. They can make it so other judges won't trust you. Your entire career can implode from one really bad day in court. And Trump's team just had that really bad day. So stick with me here, because what happens next? That's where this gets really interesting. That's where we start seeing the dominoes fall. And yeah, that's where Trump's legal strategy might actually be in serious trouble for the first time in a way that even he can't tweet or talk his way out of. This is going to get messy. Let's dive in. All right. So let's get into what actually went down, because the headlines make it sound like chaos, and honestly, they're not wrong. But there's more to this story than just judge yells at Trump. Way more. First, we got to understand what fake evidence means in a legal context. Because like, when you or I hear fake evidence, we think of totally made up stuff, right? Like someone photoshopping a document or creating a fake email thread or whatever. And yeah, that's part of it. But in court, fake evidence can also mean evidence that's been tampered with, evidence that's taken out of context in a way that completely changes its meaning, evidence where the source can't be verified, or evidence that contradicts stuff the same legal team said in a different case. And apparently Trump's lawyers did some combination of these things. Now, the exact details haven't been fully released yet because court proceedings take forever to get transcribed and published. But based on what people in the courtroom saw and heard, the judge specifically called out inconsistencies, documents that didn't match up with other documents, timelines that made no sense. And when the judge started asking basic questions like where did this come from and who verified this, Trump's team couldn't give straight answers. Can you believe this? These are supposed to be top-tier lawyers. These are people getting paid massive amounts of money, and they're fumbling basic evidentiary questions like law school students in their first mock trial. So the judge did what judges do when they smell something fishy. He stopped everything, called both legal teams up to the bench, and basically said, we're not moving forward until you can prove this evidence is legitimate. And that's when Trump, who apparently couldn't help himself, started interjecting, started talking over his own lawyers, started trying to explain or justify or whatever, and that's when the gavel came down. Hard. The judge and people who were there say his voice was super calm, but also ice cold, told Trump directly that he needed to be quiet, that his lawyers would speak for him, that if he continued to interrupt, there would be consequences. And Trump, for maybe the first time in any of his court cases, actually went silent. Just sat there, fuming, but silent. Now here's where this gets even more interesting. Behind closed doors. And we're talking about after the hearing ended. Sources say Trump's legal team is in complete disarray. They're fighting among themselves about who screwed up. They're trying to figure out how to salvage their defense strategy. And they're absolutely terrified that the judge is going to follow through on his sanctions threat. Because sanctions aren't just a slap on the wrist. Sanctions can mean massive fines. They can mean you have to pay the other side's legal fees. They can mean formal complaints to the State Bar Association. And if you're a lawyer, that can end your career. So these lawyers are now stuck between defending Trump, which is already the hardest job in legal land, and protecting their own professional licenses. And let's be honest here. This has been a pattern with Trump's legal teams for years. Remember all the lawyers who stopped representing him after January 6th? Remember all the lawyers who got indicted alongside him in various cases? Remember Rudy Giuliani losing his law license? This isn't new. But what is new is a judge calling it out this directly, this publicly, in a way that creates a permanent court record. Legal experts are saying this moment could actually be a turning point, not because it's going to magically make all of Trump's legal problems go away or suddenly make him guilty of everything, but because it establishes a pattern. It gives other judges permission to be tougher. It shows that you can't just railroad through the legal system with aggressive tactics and questionable evidence and expect judges to just roll over. One former prosecutor said, and this quote is wild, that Trump's team basically committed legal suicide. That they took a case that might have been winnable, or at least defendable, and turned it into a credibility nightmare. Because once a judge thinks you're presenting fake evidence in one case, Good luck getting that judge, or any other judge who hears about it, to trust anything else you submit. And here's the thing that nobody's really talking about enough. This doesn't just affect this one case. Trump's got multiple legal situations happening right now. Different courts, different judges, different charges. But judges talk to each other, not formally, but they read each other's rulings. They attend the same legal conferences. They see the same patterns. So when one judge publicly calls out Trump's legal team for evidence problems, you better believe other judges are taking notes. This is also happening at like the worst possible time for Trump politically. Now, I'm not talking about him running for anything because he's already in his second term, but he's trying to govern. He's trying to push his agenda. He's trying to maintain authority and credibility. And it's really hard to do that when you're getting embarrassed in court, when headlines are saying a judge shut you down, when your own lawyers are scrambling to explain themselves. The optics are terrible. And Trump, love him or hate him, has always cared deeply about optics. He hates looking weak. He hates looking like he lost. And this looks like a loss, a big one. The kind where you can't spin it or reframe it or blame the media, because it happened in court, with witnesses, with official transcripts being made. So what does Trump do now? Well, based on past behavior, he's probably going to attack the judge. He's probably going to claim bias. He's probably going to say the whole system is rigged against him. And yeah, his supporters will probably believe that. But here's the problem. That strategy works in politics. That strategy works in rallies and on social media. It doesn't work in court. In court, you need evidence. You need credible witnesses. You need a legal argument that holds up under scrutiny. And right now, Trump's team doesn't seem to have that. They've got a judge who's already suspicious of them. They've got evidence that's been publicly questioned. And they've got a defendant who can't seem to stop making things worse by talking. There's also this broader question about what this means for the justice system overall. Because, think about it. If a former president's legal team can get away with presenting questionable evidence, what does that say about the system? What does that say about equal treatment under the law? What does that say about whether powerful people get to play by different rules? And that's what makes this moment so significant. The judge didn't let it slide. He could have. He could have just quietly ruled against certain pieces of evidence and moved on. But instead, he made a public statement. He created a record. He drew a line. And now everybody's watching to see what happens next. Will there actually be sanctions? Will Trump's lawyers face professional consequences? Will this change how Trump approaches his other legal battles? Will other judges follow this lead and get tougher? We don't know yet. But what we do know is that something shifted in that courtroom. The dynamic changed. And Trump, for maybe the first time in his legal saga, looked like he didn't have control of the situation. That's got to be eating at him. And honestly, that might be more dangerous than any legal ruling, because Trump makes his worst decisions when he feels cornered, when he feels disrespected, when he feels like he's losing. So yeah, buckle up, because this story is just getting started, okay? So let's break this down into the pieces that actually matter, because there's a lot of noise around this story, a lot of hot takes and speculation, but really there are 3 or 4 core things you need to understand. First, the credibility issue. This is massive. In court, your credibility is everything. If a judge thinks you're lying or playing games or presenting bogus evidence, you're done. It doesn't matter how good your legal arguments are. It doesn't matter how much money you have for appeals. You've lost the judge, and that's almost impossible to recover from. Trump's team just lost credibility in a very public way, and that follows them. Other cases, other judges, other prosecutors, they're all going to reference this moment. Second, the sanctions threat. People don't realize how serious this is. When a judge threatens sanctions against lawyers, that's not just about money. That's about your professional reputation. That's about whether you can practice law. Trump's burned through so many lawyers already, and now the ones who are still with him are facing potential career-ending consequences. Who's going to want to represent him after this? Who's going to risk their law license for a client who makes their job impossible? Third, the political fallout. Now, Trump's base probably doesn't care about this. They're going to see it as more proof that the system's against him. But independent voters, moderate Republicans, people who are on the fence, this kind of thing matters to them. It feeds into this narrative that Trump's chaotic, that he doesn't respect institutions, that working with him means constant drama and legal problems. And for someone trying to govern effectively, that's a huge problem. Fourth, and this is the one people keep missing, this sets a precedent. Other judges in other Trump cases are now watching. They've seen that you can push back, that you can call out questionable tactics, that you don't have to just accept whatever Trump's legal team throws at you. And that's going to change how these cases proceed. Judges are going to be more skeptical, more willing to question evidence, more likely to impose restrictions. So what comes next? Well, there's going to be a follow-up hearing. The judge is going to want Trump's team to either prove their evidence is legit or withdraw it and face consequences. And neither option is good for Trump. If they try to prove it and fail, sanctions, career damage, potential bar complaints. If they withdraw it, their whole defense strategy probably collapses. They lose key arguments. They look incompetent. And Trump, being Trump, is not going to make this easier for his lawyers. He's probably going to keep talking, keep attacking the judge, keep trying to fight this in the court of public opinion instead of the actual court. And every time he does that, he gives the judge more reason to be tough on him. There's also the media angle here. Every news outlet is covering this. Every legal analyst is weighing in. And the consensus seems to be that Trump's team really messed up. Like, even commentators who are usually sympathetic to Trump are struggling to defend this. Because fake evidence isn't a left or right issue. It's not a political opinion thing. It's just wrong. It's a violation of basic legal ethics. And here's what's really going to hurt Trump long term. This isn't just about one case anymore. This is going to be brought up in every future case. Prosecutors are going to reference it. Judges are going to remember it. It becomes part of his legal history, part of the narrative that follows him. And in legal proceedings, patterns matter. One mistake might be an accident. Multiple mistakes, that's a pattern. And patterns can sink you. Let's also talk about what this means for his other legal issues. Trump's dealing with multiple cases right now, different jurisdictions, different charges, different legal teams in some cases, but they're all connected by one thing, him. And when something like this happens, it affects everything. It makes prosecutors more aggressive. It makes judges less likely to give him the benefit of the doubt. It makes juries, if any of these go to trial, more skeptical of his defense. And look, I know some people watching this are thinking, yeah, but nothing ever happens to Trump. He always gets away with it. And I get that. I really do. Because we've seen Trump survive scandals and legal challenges that would have destroyed anyone else. But here's the thing. The walls are getting tighter. The consequences are getting more real. In moments like what happened in that courtroom, those are cracks in the armor. Trump's whole strategy has always been to overwhelm the system. File so many motions that courts get backlogged. Attack judges so they're worried about looking biased. Make everything so chaotic that it's hard to focus on the actual facts. But judges are catching on. They're getting tired of it. And they're starting to push back in ways that actually matter. This judge's public rebuke is part of that pushback. It's a signal. It's saying, we're not going to let you turn our courtrooms into circuses anymore. And that signal is being heard by other judges, by prosecutors, by the legal community as a whole. So where does this leave us? Well, Trump's in a tougher spot, legally, than he's been in a while. His legal team is in chaos. His credibility with judges is damaged, and his options are narrowing. He can't just bluster his way through this. He can't just attack and deflect. He actually has to deal with the legal reality. And the legal reality is this. A federal judge publicly questioned his evidence, threatened sanctions, made it clear that there are lines that won't be crossed. And now Trump has to respond. He has to either prove his case or face consequences. And neither path looks good. For those of us watching, this is a pivotal moment. This is one of those things that might seem like just another legal drama right now. But in 6 months or a year, we're going to look back and see it as a turning point. As the moment when the legal system finally said enough, when judges stopped being intimidated, when Trump's legal invincibility started to crack. And honestly, it's about time. Because nobody should be above the law. Not former presidents, not current presidents, nobody. And if Trump's team was playing fast and loose with evidence, they deserve to be called out. They deserve to face consequences. That's how the system is supposed to work. So keep watching this story, because it's not over, not even close. There's going to be more hearings, more drama, more revelations about what evidence was questionable and why. And through all of it, we're going to see whether the justice system can actually hold powerful people accountable. My guess? This judge isn't backing down. And that means Trump's in for a really rough time, which, depending on your perspective, is either justice finally being served or another example of the system being weaponized. I'll let you decide which one you think it is. But either way, that courtroom moment, that silence after the judge's final words, that's going to echo for a while. And Trump's probably still hearing it in his head, still feeling that moment when he couldn't talk his way out, couldn't control the room, couldn't win. And for someone like Trump, that's got to sting worse than any legal ruling ever could. Stay tuned, because this story is just getting started. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss what happens next.